Hi, Doug.
Hey, guess what? I understand. Shh, don't say anything, but I understand that Congress is actually working on a health care plan. What have you heard?
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about that. Of course, plan passed the House of Representatives, which was very restrictive, cut back a lot of elements of Obamacare. President Trump himself called it a mean bill recently. Now, Senate Republicans are putting together their own bill in secret, and they're doing it for a very particular reason, Doug, which is they have a very small margin here. There are only 52 Republican senators. It's a very complicated bill, and they're trying to shield Republican senators from attack. It's very hard to generate opposition to a bill that you haven't seen yet. And that's why this is being done in secret. But the fact is, the opposition is there. It's been a point of theological principle and political principle for Republicans for years that Obamacare is terrible. It has to be repealed. Every Republican campaigns on that. But the reality on the ground is in many states with Republican governors that voted for Trump, this bill has benefited a lot of people. And so you have governors in Ohio and Arkansas and Massachusetts and Nevada saying to their Republican senators, wait, this bill is not as bad as you think it is, and it has really benefited a lot of our folks. And so these Republican senators are not only facing pressure from Democrats, they're facing pressure from their own governors. And that's why this is all being done in secret.
How much of this, too, do you think is the Senate has looked at the members of the House of Representatives who've gone home to meet with their constituents, and they've gotten hammered? I mean, let's be really honest. Some of those they're not conversations. They're just people yelling at politicians. And I can't help but wonder if the Senate isn't looking at this the same fashion and saying, why do we want to get yelled at over this? Let's try and work something out here and make it agreeable to everybody.
Well, that's a fair point. But, you can almost discount the folks who show up at those town hall meetings as partisan Democrats. That's kind of a given. What's really more serious threat to these Republican senators, as I say, is their own governors, their Republican governors. You get someone like John Kasich of Ohio. He signed a letter along with Governor Sandoval of Nevada, Governor Baker of Massachusetts, saying to the Congress, this has to be done on a bipartisan basis. So if you're Senator Portman from Ohio, you've got your own Republican governor saying, don't go along with the Republican leadership. So you can almost discount the Democratic activists who show up at the town hall, but you can't discount your own Republican governor who is saying, this is good for our state, this is good for Republican voters, and you've got to pay attention.
Commonwealth of Kentucky had their own, well, they did not call it Obamacare. They called it KY Connect or something like that. And
Right.
and the Democratic governor was replaced by a Republican governor who first thing he did was shut the whole thing down. Come to find out, there's an awful lot of people in that state, and you touched on this, who realized, hey, we've got health care for the first time ever, and it's expensive, but we've got it when we couldn't even get it before. I guess I wonder, it stands to reason the Republicans are going to keep calling this thing Obamacare until it freezes over, and the Democrats are kind of trying to studiously avoid calling it anything but, a health care plan, right?
Yes, and look, you put your finger on an important point. No one, including President Obama himself or the Democrats who voted for it, would say that Obamacare is perfect. It has had a lot of problems, and many of them self-inflicted wounds by the Obama administration, who made a lot of mistakes in implementing it. But the fact is, the numbers are clear, and the Congressional Budget Office, in evaluating the House Republican plan, said 24 million Americans who have health care now would lose it under the Republican plan. So that's the political reality that a lot of Republican governors are struggling with. As I say, for years it's become this political cliche, Obamacare is terrible. And it's easy when you're on a campaign trail, whether you're President Trump or other Republican candidates, to mouth the phrase, repeal and replace. You get down to the reality, particularly in terms of the expansion of Medicaid, which 31 states, including a lot run by Republicans, accepted extra federal money to expand coverage of Medicaid to low-income Americans. That's the single most important innovation in Obamacare, probably the most successful, but also very expensive. But Republicans are now saying, how can we take this away from our own people who have now, as you point out quite rightly, are benefiting from this from the first time. And that's the real crunch. How do you reconcile this Republican theology over many years with the reality on the ground, which is a lot of people have benefited from this program, as imperfect and as flawed as it is?
One last quick question before we go. What's the timetable on this? Because Congress is going to start taking time off for the summer, and
Right.
then the fall shows up, and ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. So they're under a tight time schedule here.
Well, that's one of the reasons why this is being done in secret, because any new administration, this is a magic moment for Republicans. They have the House, the Senate, the White House. They have a lot of major issues that they have been working on for years, healthcare chief among them, taxes coming along right behind it. And they realize time is running out. That so much of the first 6 months of this administration has been, attention has been drained away by the president's own impulsive behavior, by the investigations into Russian meddling and possible obstruction of justice. And one of the reasons they're doing it in secret is they really have to seize this moment, because you get past the summer and into the fall, it becomes increasingly difficult to get Congress to pay attention. But that's, in some ways, the most damaging result of these investigations into the president's behavior. We're far from any conclusion of those investigations, and they might not come to anything, but they already have had a major impact in draining attention, draining energy. People in the White House have had to hire their own lawyers. How can they possibly pay full attention to legislation when...
And we just lost him. Oh, well. We were finished up anyway. Steve Roberts, thank you very much. ABC News political analyst, for joining us from Washington, D.C. here on the Big 550.